I believe that there is growing recognition within Africa that torture prevention is not only a human rights issue, but also it's a governance and rule of law issue. So institutions that respect rights, we have noted that they tend to build greater legitimacy and public cooperation, and that helps in the protection of rights. The first hours of detention are often the most critical when it comes to arrest and detention. This is because when detainees are detained or detainees are arrested and put in custody, they are very vulnerable and they're at the mercy of their captors or they're at the mercy of their detaining officers. So many times that's the time within the first 48 hours, that is the time they face abuse, intimidation, coercion, because then they have to, what is required of them is to give confessions or to testify. So in my experience, there are several warning signs that you can look at or they indicate that safeguards have been or are failed or are failing. And one of the major indicator is the delays in documentation. Every time you find that there is delayed documentation, undocumented detainees, arrest without putting people in lawfully recognized detention places, you know that the oversight or the safeguards have been flouted, because every time you do not record, or when records are incomplete or altered or unavailable, questions raised around accountability, and it becomes very difficult to account for persons or to to hold perpetrators accountable. The other warning sign would be denial of access to lawyers, families, medical officers. Every time detainees are not allowed to have external relatives or lawyers or whatever it is, then the risk of being abused is very high. So, and that creates isolation, and they're susceptible to abuse because there's no public scrutiny. The other telltale sign is the limited awareness. Every time people do not know about their rights, many times they're abused. And every time we have police officers or law enforcement officers who may not know rights of detainees, every time our officials do not know the rights of detainees, the risk of abuse is very high. Institutionally, we note that there's a culture that prioritizes confession over evidence-based investigations. So our officers or law enforcement officers are keen on getting confessions rather than getting evidence-based investigations or doing evidence-based investigations, because maybe they don't have the tools, maybe they don't have the skills, and this is a red flag. So in many contexts, torture or coercion tends to emerge where investigators feel pressured to get confessions rather than having a discussion and building rapport with suspects. So the key lesson here is that prevention depends heavily on transparency, documentation, access to the suspects, and oversight. When we go out to monitor place of detention, it's not about numbers, it's about individuals. And one of the issues that have stayed with me is that every time you go in place of detention, you see people. It is not animals. It is not numbers. It is human beings who deserve to be treated with dignity. It is human beings who need to be respected. So I believe that I have learned that regular access to places of detention matters greatly. So conducting regular and unannounced visits is very important, but it is not an end in itself. It's important that you build rapport with the detention officers. Once they realize that you respect their work, you are able to guide them through the human rights standards in a respectful way, and they respect the issues that what you're telling them. I love the Méndez Principles, and I think that it's a very good policy document. I would wish that the Méndez Principles become part of the training of all law enforcement agencies within, particularly in prisons and police custody, as well as military, because they also detain, they have suspects that they detain. So every law enforcement officer requires to be trained on the Méndez Principles. How I wish to see that the Méndez Principles become part of the training curricula of enforcement agencies within the training schools of the different agencies. It would also be very good if the Méndez Principles become part of the curricula of prosecutors for students in law school, so that they are learned at an early age as a course study, and also examinable. And then how I wish the states would ensure that these principles are incorporated within institutional frameworks within every state. I think that way would be guaranteed on the implementation of the Méndez Principles.